The only thing more beautiful than the sound of silence is the sound of children. And I'm so grateful that you brought Finley here tonight, and I hope that all of you will feel comfortable bringing your kids, your grandkids, to Temple because, Max Fargenstein, welcome back from Chicago. Glad you're here. Because if we don't bring our kids when they're kids, they'll never fall in love with the Jewish tradition, with the beauty of what it means to be here for Shabbat. Speaking of children, last week I had the very humid pleasure of joining dozens of young people from Temple Israel down in Utica, Mississippi at Henry S. Jacobs Camp. And in addition to playing a heated game of soccer, yes, pun intended, and watching some truly epic jumps on the blob, the highlight of my week was helping the solo lemurs, the counselors in training, lead a Shabbat morning service. As they spoke, these young adults spoke. Many of them reflected on how different it was transitioning from camper to staff, how much hard work, how much dedication, and what a good attitude it takes to create the Jacobs magic that each of them was blessed to enjoy when they were a kid for so many years as campers. But they also shared how proud they were to be able to give back, to be leaders for yet another generation of Jacob's campers who will fall in love with Judaism each summer in that sweltering little slice of heaven we call Mississippi. And even though they are only 17 years old, they'd already internalized an important lesson about leadership. That true leadership is about service to others, about serving something that is greater than yourself. And it's a lesson that is front and center in this week's parasha, Korach, which is named after a leader of a rebellion against Moses and Aaron. This ancient rabble-rouser Korach, along with exactly 252 co-conspirators, tried to turn the people against Moses and Aaron. And on the surface of it, Korach had a pretty good case. He said to Moses and Aaron, and I'm quoting here from Numbers, "You have gone too far, for all of the community are holy, all of them, and Adonai is in their midst. Why then do you raise yourselves above Adonai's congregation?" In one of history's first recorded populist rebellions, Korach is essentially saying, aren't all the Israelites equal? Why do the two of you and your families get these special privileges? Why do you get to bring the sacrifices to God and we don't? Now, on its face, this seems like a pretty good argument. But we'll soon find out God doesn't like it. God opens up the earth to swallow Korach and his followers, and they are no more. Eesh. What was so wrong about Korach's rebellion? The rabbinic sages, they understand that like so many other anti-establishment movements throughout history, though Korach purported to be representing the common man, what he was really after was self-aggrandizement. In the words of 16th century Italian Rabbi Bartonura, you may have heard of the famous Moscato named after him, but Rabbi Bartonura said that Korach and his followers' aim and ultimate intent was to achieve honor and power. His leadership was selfish, not selfless. Moses and Aaron, on the other hand, gave of themselves, not for their own good, but for the good of the nation. When we think in our day about what makes a good leader, not so much has changed. As the counselors in training said, the joy and the pride of their newfound leadership was that they were serving something much bigger than themselves, creating this special place for others. On this July 4th weekend, as we give thanks and we celebrate the leaders who succeeded in righteous revolution nearly 250 years ago. We recall that instead of seeking more and more power for themselves, they consciously limited the power of the executive in search of a greater good. In the words of my rabbinic colleague, Rabbi Ben Richards, if George Washington had decided to become a monarch instead of a president, America would look very different. As you may know, America's founders were actually deeply influenced by the Hebrew Bible and by Jewish ideals. When the Declaration of Independence says that all men are created equal, it echoes the book of Genesis, that each person is made b'tselem Elohim, in the image of God. They saw in their freedom from monarchy, they saw a reprise of the ancient Israelites' exodus from slavery to freedom. The seal of the United States, proposed by Ben Franklin, depicted that very quintessential scene from the book of Exodus, the Israelites crossing a split sea with the oppressive Egyptian army engulfed by its waters. Another option you might have seen for our national seal, which was proposed by Thomas Jefferson. It depicts an image from the book of the Torah that we read this week, the book of Numbers. It depicts the ancient Israelites wandering through the wilderness on the way to the promised land. In the words of Rabbi Meir Soloveitchik, this demonstrates how the road to liberty is long and it's arduous. The founders of this country saw in their rebellion the creation of a new promised land, one whose long road to liberty we, each one of us, is blessed to do our very best to navigate to this day. But the founders' righteous revolution contrasts with Korach's in large part due to just one verb, to the very first word in this parasha, vayikach. Vayikach, and Korach took. Vayikach Korach. He didn't give, but he took. And Rabbi Shai Held teaches in the name of the great Musar Rabbi, Eliyahu Dessler, that this lesson applies not just to our leaders, but applies to each one of us, each human being. He says, when the Almighty created human beings, God made them capable of both giving and taking. To be created in the image of God is to have the capacity to imitate God's own generosity. In giving, he says, we become like God, the ultimate giver. But there is another dimension to human nature, taking, by which a person aspires to draw to himself all that comes within his reach. This is what people call egotism or selfishness, and it, says Rabbi Dessler, is the root of all evils. The real leaders, the true leaders, look out just for themselves and those closest to them, making choices that endanger or allow them to profit from the people that they purportedly serve. Are those the kind of leaders that we, the inheritors 248 years later of this great nation, that we deserve? This 4th of July weekend, I want to invite each one of us to celebrate the leaders, Jefferson, Adams, Washington, that set out these great aspirations, even if we haven't made it all the way there. They set out and they gave us an example for who we can be for these United States we call home. And I also want to give thanks to our Sololim, to our young leaders, the leaders of tomorrow, who learned our founders' lesson and who give love and create magic for the ones in their care. May we all learn that lesson this Shabbat. Ken Yehi Ratzon. Let it be God's will.